Okay, it's recording. We're good.
Cool.
Perfect.
All right. Who wants to start?
I can start. So I guess one of the first things that I wanted to talk about, and I actually got a new perspective on it 2 days ago from the first time that I thought about it was, I believe it was the first prompt and talking about a certain skill in your area of interest that talking about which attention or processing mechanism you use. And even though it's the same skill, I interpreted the question as how can you make it three different variations of it using a different processing method. So I was playing goalie in soccer, and I've always been a terrible goalie. I thought about it earlier in the week, and I always kind of thought like there are different saves that a goalie can make. There are reaction saves that are really close up, and this kind of translates into other sports as well, like especially hockey. But then there are shots that are from like 20 or 25 yards out, and there are a ton of other stimuli in front of the goalie. So if you have like 5 or 6 players in front of you, the most important part of making that save probably isn't going to be how quick your reactions are because you have a lot of time to respond. But with everything else in front of you, I think that identifying the stimulus from far away and tracking it through everything is going to be the most important part of making that save. But when we think about like a penalty kick in soccer, that is you're 12 yards away and there's no other stimulus outside of maybe crowd noise, or that really only makes sense if you're a professional. But if you play at a lower level, it's normally pretty quiet and it's just one-on-one. Goalies will sometimes guess. I mean, that's the most popular thing that professional goalies do now because the amount of time that you have to like respond to something like that, the ball's already going to be in the net. So I think for them, that is totally the movement programming part of it. And I think their ability to trust their mechanics to get to a certain spot and make that save is totally different from a shot that's coming from 25 yards out with 6 or 7 people in front of them trying to track the ball. Do you guys agree with that, or have anything that relates to that specifically, maybe in a different sport?
Yeah, so I'll ask for soccer. I think I haven't played organized soccer since I was a little kid, but in terms of the rapidity with which you move, is it? I mean, because the ball is shot so fast, you don't depending on upon the level you're playing, you don't have a lot of time to react. Typically, are you jumping with the same amount of speed and force as you would from a ball coming far away as you would if a ball is within 10 yards or within the smaller box? I don't know how far that is away, 8 yards, 10 yards.
Yeah, so I think that kind of comes with the amount of experience you have playing a certain position. So there are a lot of things that playing in the field, when I see them in the middle of the field, just anywhere besides goalie, the skills that you have to use and the things that you have to pay attention to are so much different that I pretty much register them automatically. Pretty much like the automaticity, or however you say that word, whatever.
I think you got it.
Automaticity. But when I was in goalie the other day, playing with my high school team, I realized that I could track the stimulus, and I feel like if I were able to react in time, I could dive to get there or I could reach out, but my brain is just not programmed to respond to something like that. My first instinct is to just look at the ball and watch it go past me and then be like, oh, I probably could have saved that. I don't think to actually dive out to save it, which when you're a goalie and you practice that nearly every day, those just become your natural instincts.
Right.
Yeah.
Need more live bullets, right? So active live reps, get that anticipation down and that type of stuff like that.
Yeah, and you can see the cues. I think especially as a field player, if one of my teammates is shooting a ball, I'm able to see where a rebound is going to come out and where to be for a rebound. And even as a goalie, I can read someone's body language to see when they're about to shoot and have an idea of where they're going to place it. But as soon as I am able to track it, my response program is just not quick enough, I guess, to actually get to the movement part of the
Yeah, for sure.
That definitely ties into the third prompt of like the difference between novice and expert athletes. Like you're an expert in soccer, but not that position. And it is kind of interesting to think about the differences between like different positions in the same sport.
100%.
And you play
Like, you
softball,
just-
right?
Yeah.
And everyone normally has a second position, and it's probably
Yeah.
it always has like some skills that translate between the two positions. They're not totally different. You don't have to train in a different way, but maybe like catcher to first base.
Yeah, or short to second, anyone in the outfield. Like it's really rare when you have a player that can master all those skills and be in the same and play different positions. Like I could never play short or second because my brain just wouldn't work that way. Like I didn't have the response programming or the movement programming to do that. Like I can get a ball hit to me and throw it to first base like I would playing third, but I could never do the transition places where you were in where you had to be the cutoff for the outfield or you had to be covering second base for a throw down from the catcher for a steal. I just could never get my mind wrapped around it. So they just put me at third base and were like, just field the ball.
I will say also, like typically in softball, right? Depending upon your position, you're getting a ball thrown to you at different speeds, different forms, different directions, right? So typically as a catcher, if you got a good pitcher, the odds of you having to deal with catching a ball that's either to your right or left shoulder is much less than say like a third baseman, right? They might have a line drive they have to reach out for that is shoulder height, or even more so an outfielder who have to reach back. So a catcher also doesn't have as much time to react because they're already squatting down. They have to expect essentially that the ball is going to be within like a 2 foot diameter or like a 2 foot long, 2 feet or like 2 or 3 feet up and down. So you're preparing yourself typically for different expectations, right? And when you practice for those expectations, the chance of you being able to execute can be much less. So do you think it would be more difficult for someone to go from, say, like your third base position to catcher, or a catcher position to third base?
I think probably like being a catcher is hard just for the fact that you're on your knees the whole time. You have to drop to your knees, block certain balls. But I think it would be harder for a catcher to move to any other position because, like you said, they have that window of space and you have signs from the pitcher. Like you can watch or from the catcher to the pitcher, like you can watch any major league game and they say that they get crossed up between the pitcher and the catcher because they threw a sign down for maybe a breaking pitch and he gets a fastball high and tight and that goes straight over the catcher's head to the backstop. So, I mean, I think it would be harder for a catcher to move anywhere just because they don't have that like automatic response of a ball being in their frame. Like they don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah, the
like,
footwork required. Yeah, the footwork required is totally different.
Yeah, I was watching the Phillies the other night, even though they had a horrible end to the season. Don't want to talk about it too much, but Real Muto was playing first base, and I think at least once, maybe twice, his foot just came off the bag because he's not used to having to stretch out to catch like a first baseman is. And even if it is in that perfect window, like you said, Danny, the footwork is just totally different. And it's not a part of their usual thought process. They're focused on like get in front of the ball.
Yeah. Right. Or even to find the first basemen are programmed to, they have that, I guess automaticity, but also like they have that programming to just, they know where first base is in relation to where they got the ball, where they fielded the ball. So it's easy for them.
Yeah.
I always thought a catcher was interesting though, because you have the added stimuli of someone swinging a bat like right before the ball. And the bat, even if they miss, it's normally like pretty close to hitting the ball. So how you're able to just stay locked in on only the ball to be able to track it that whole time, it's one of the craziest positions in all of sports.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And essentially, when you have like less than a second to react to where the ball is going to be, right? Are you going to hear a crack of a bat? Are you going to have the ball in your mitt? You know, it's tough to determine that. Like,
is it going to tip off and hit you in the face?
Yeah.
Well, and that's like I often think about lacrosse, like the act of cradling while also multitasking and doing all the other things you have to do while playing lacrosse. You know, like I've never personally played, but some of my best friends did, and like just learning the act of cradling took me like 2 weeks. You know, so like the fact that it's so automatic for them at this point that they can do that and cut and change direction and go through traffic and all types of stuff like that, like the amount of training that you have to get for that, you know, it's ridiculous to think that that's so normal for them, you know. But
yeah, that's another one of those things that's like automatic, and you can see that because I actually played from like 3rd to 9th grade.
Right.
And what differentiates the best kids when they're like 9 years old is who can cradle and who can't, because like everyone's bad at that age unless you're a prodigy. But if you can run at full speed without dropping the ball, you are going to be a step ahead of it pretty much everyone else. Like no one can really throw and catch when you're that young, but if you're remotely fast and don't drop the ball, you're pretty good.
Right. Yeah, see, lacrosse is one of those sports like it's just now taking off in South Carolina. So I'd never been exposed to it, especially living in rural South Carolina, until I went to college. And you got guys from like Canada and Florida and Maryland where it's huge, and like you just get opened up like this whole new world. You realize how difficult it actually is.
Yeah, lacrosse is super hard. Lacrosse and hockey are both really hard because it's the same thing. Like in hockey, you have to push a puck with a stick. Yeah. And it's like the same premise as cradling a ball. You have a net on the end of a stick and you have to hold a ball in it. It's crazy. Like the amount of
stimuli.
Yeah. So, and plus the people around you, the ball, the stick, everything. There's a ton of stimuli.
Yeah. And like so that reminds me of golf. Like golf, it's a little bit easier to get under the ball because the ball is already curved, and like that small degrees can allow it to have liftoff. But for hockey, if you don't have the flex of the stick, right? The reason it's curved is to have the flex of the stick because the side of the puck is just flat. If you can't get under it at some point in that like fraction of a second, it's just going to stay on the ice. So you have to be able to have that flex of the stick, apply pressure, and make a quick movement in all like a couple seconds to be able to have liftoff. Speaking about lacrosse, I am the coach at our school for lacrosse, and I will say that like the biggest difference for goalies, like we have our soccer goalie is also our lacrosse goalie, but the biggest issue he has is remembering to look behind the net, because a lot of our goals or a lot of opponents' goals are scored from the guy who's behind the net, trying to find a way to either throw the ball past his defender who's right in front of him, to distract him, or to have like a good fake. Because if you're not a very agile guy, you should not be back there. So once you get back there, though, the goalie, if he doesn't look back there, he's missing really like 50% of what happens on offense, because the ball is back there so often. Guys can get past the defender really well and give a quick shot inside. It's low or high. They're typically not going to be coming back to middle from that position behind. They might just give a quick pass across the net, or a very low or very high corner shot. So I think that there's more surface area that can be, less surface area that you can score for a lacrosse goalie than a soccer goalie, but you have to be much more precise. And having that extension of having a stick makes it much tougher for you to predict, especially like if you're constantly restringing your stick, the mesh is going to be different. The way the ball is placed in the stick is going to be different. So it can literally throw your shot off by several feet if you're not used to throwing with a certain mesh, and or like a certain head in general, because the way you even shoot, like if you're not shooting with proper mechanics, it can throw you off entirely. So I'd say that the biggest difference for lacrosse goalies is the fact that they have to focus 360 degrees. They can't just focus like 180 degrees for what's in front of them.
Well, that's like hockey goalies too.
Mhm.
It's funny that you said that your soccer goalie is a lacrosse goalie, because I feel like being a hockey goalie would translate way better into being a lacrosse goalie, because
Mhm.
you can actually go behind the net in hockey. And while there isn't as much time possession wise spent back there,
Mhm.
people still get stuck up on the boards, and the goalie literally head on a swivel all the time, because someone can just post up right behind the net like they do in lacrosse. And you see so many assists just come from back there in a
Yeah.
blind spot over their shoulder, because they can't track two things at once. They need to keep one thing in their sight line. But soccer, naturally, everything you can see like almost 180 degrees, because everything's in front of you for the most part, as long as you're in the right position.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
definitely an advantage for a soccer goalie. They only have what's in front of them to look at. And I mean, it's the same thing in baseball or softball. Not so much that you have to be aware of what's behind you, but there are still plays that are made behind you. Like if you are a catcher, you have to go behind the back or toward the backstop to field balls, either that got passed or foul tipped or whatever. So I can't imagine being a hockey or a lacrosse goalie and having to pay attention and read everything that's happening in front of you, but then also having to look behind you. Like that just seems impossible.
Mhm. Also, with the lacrosse goalie, typically you're not. One thing you have to worry about for hockey is that the ball or the puck's not typically traveling through the air. If I'm passing it to you, it's going to be traveling, especially in that 10 feet or 20 feet of space from behind the net to in front of the net for a forward to get the shot off in hockey. Lacrosse, the ball is traveling through the air, typically at a faster velocity than the puck is. So the puck, like I can see it's happening right in front of me on the ground. All I'm have to do is just reach out and stop it. But for lacrosse ball, I had the added difficulty of being able to read the guy behind me, who's the X, who's running. He's got about 10 yards of space that he can run before he even initiates a pass. So I'm going to track him, watch him. By the time he's already up towards the net, somebody behind me who's trying to score is ready to receive the pass. So there's more time to react. But if you spend too much time focusing on that X guy and not enough like listening to your teammates, like, hey, there's a guy coming up to score, then you're going to get a goal scored on you every time, because the ball is going to travel midway through the air, 5 or 6 feet above the ground. If you're not reacting, then you're not going to have much of a chance of stopping it. And the ball is traveling faster than the puck is on a pass.
Yeah, and as small as a like detail as it is, like the puck always being on the ground in hockey, it's also black on a white surface, which makes it a little bit easier to track. Whereas a lacrosse ball, just having played before, even though it's a white ball, the way that it's traveling through the air, it always like it kind of blends in and it travels at a fast velocity. So it's harder to track through the air.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Well, that and on top of like in lacrosse, you're playing on a bigger field than you would be in hockey, and you have to actually catch a lacrosse ball.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in hockey, sometimes the puck dings off the boards or hits a skate, but there's always going to be someone 5 feet away from you ready to get that and either go to the other side of the ice or stay in your zone. But it's like having the added stimulus of actually having to catch the ball, cradle, and then think of another pass. Like the response programming for that is, I think, almost a lot more in depth.
Yeah, and there's also, I don't know if it would count as a stimulus, but the when a ball is in someone, like when someone has it in their stick, it's not really the easiest thing to see. So that's why in lacrosse you'll see a lot of like deception plays where if someone has a screen, someone will roll out and you don't really know who has the ball. And that's like when the best time to get a shot off is, because the goalie really just has
No
to
clue what ball is.
Yeah, I've seen some teams do a hidden ball trick. High school teams don't really do it too well, but college teams do and pro teams do. They'll be at the perfect angle where they can pretend they're passing the ball to each other in each other's sticks, and it's impossible for the goalie to tell who's got the ball because they were both like one stick was behind the other in his or her line of view, so you can't see like who's got it. For women's lacrosse, because the strings are different colors, it's easier to see. But in men's lacrosse, it's really tough to tell. And there have been so many shots where like I'm guarding this guy here, thinking he has the ball, and in the meantime, this guy is taking the shot because they're both doing the same exact movement, trying to be deceptive. So
and when you are at that higher level, even when you don't have the ball, you're able, I guess, to disguise it better. Like, you know how you have to move, you know how to like disguise your body language, do certain things to make it look like you still have it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The same thing as like trick plays in football, or I guess not so much trick plays, but
Misdirection plays.
yeah, like
Right.
the quarterback goes to pass off to their running back in the backfield. And if you pull it off, I think the Packers are doing, I saw it this past weekend. They did some crazy misdirection play where it was the quarterback's going to hand off the ball to a running back and they shift like the offensive line and it just screwed everybody up. They got a ton of yards for like 5 of the same exact play and the other team just could not figure it out. So I think that's like just having to like your main focus is on the quarterback and on the running back. And a lot of times the running back pulls it off really well. And then the quarterback's just like, whatever, downfield, done.
I mean, the whole emphasis behind like play action passes is, you get defenders to look at the running back and, not focus on the quarterback or not get their proper hat reads from the offensive line and things like that. And at the high school level, especially when you get kids, that are novices, right? They're not experts. They're not focusing on the right things. They do start to focus on, maybe quarterback arm, like where their position is, or they focus on just looking in the backfield instead of reading their receiver or reading the offensive line, not coming downhill, things like that. Or even a couple years ago when the Eagles played, the Patriots in the Super Bowl, right? The little whole Nick Foles thing. I think every high school team in the state of South Carolina tried to like copycat that play, including us. And, at the high school level, when you do have novices, you can really burn people with stuff like that. And I guess what amazed me was that it was actually able to work against, a Bill Belichick defense, just the level of success those guys have and as much of experts as they are, to still be able to burn those cats with that type of play, it just blows your mind at that level.
I was going to ask you, Danny, as a football coach, because I think you see a lot more misdirection and loaded backfield type plays, option plays in high school and college as opposed to like the NFL.
Right.
Is it because of like automaticity of defenders and the schemes to be able to identify like they're not as easily fooled on misdirection plays or option plays? They're able to track things better. Is it because they anticipate well, they read cues better? And why are some quarterbacks able to like succeed better than others?
So this actually goes into like questions 2 and 3 as far as like limitations in the capacity to process info, capability, stuff like that. And then the difference in novice and expert, right? So like you're saying, you see more option type offenses in high school and college that have more misdirection. For example, we ran triple option, like what Georgia Tech ran for a very long time. That's what we ran when I was in high school. And, long story short, we're dealing with teenagers here, right? We're not dealing with, 26, 27-year-old grown men who spend, 8 hours a day watching film, to get more automatic, to get that automaticity. So it's a little bit different as far as your cognitive abilities as a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old. Attention spans are shorter. If you're going through puberty, you're still learning your body, right? We had a kid last year was like 5'10" and was pretty good. And then by the end of the season was 6'3" and was goofy and could hardly play, right? And now this year he's good because he's used to his body now. So I think at the high school level, when you do get those novices and you do type athletes and you have those limitations, both like cognitively and physically too, still growing and stuff like that, their reaction times are just a million times slower. So their ability to read, recognize, and react is going to be so much slower than a guy, who is at, like a Clemson or maybe even like in the NFL where, it is their job. They do get to practice X amount of hours a day, watch film X amount of hours a day. they've played football for 5 more years than these kids have. They're done growing. They know their body, that stuff. You get, more live bullets, like I said earlier. So you do know, and you can react faster, I think.
I guess, yeah. And to follow up on that, so I actually think that you're seeing more of that in the NFL, the way that the league is transforming. Maybe quarterbacks are just transforming because you
Some of
see
that
these
RPO
mobile
stuff.
quarterbacks. And in Philly, we're seeing, like, at least from my perspective, the prime example of, like, Carson Wentz is kind of sucking right now. Do you take a chance and give Jalen Hurts a shot and see if, like, maybe he just has more of the it factor and the way that the league is designed now? I think you
The
kind of
RPOs
need
and
mobile
stuff.
quarterback unless you have, like, I don't know, Trevor Lawrence come in the league, someone who, or
Right.
Joe Burrow, who's just lethal and accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. Just me, the way I see the game trending, the way I see the way quarterbacks are developed now. High school quarterbacks, especially just the average Joe quarterback, you pretty much have to tell them where the ball, who's pretty much going to be open. And I think the RPO, right? You're reading if that guy's going to take running back or you, and then you're reading that corner, right? So I think that's a simpler read than there are 4 receivers in the route. If this guy goes here, this guy goes here, this guy goes here, this guy goes here, right? I think it's an easier read to teach, just the way that we develop quarterbacks now being simpler, right? And I think just in general, like me, I'm not going to have a kid at quarterback on my team that's not an athlete. I think the pocket passer thing, especially at the high school level, is dead. I just think it makes you so much more, like, less dynamic.
Yeah.
So do you think, like, quarterbacks like Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger, who are slower than dirt, are just like not going to be around anymore? Do you think it's going to be more of a running game for a quarterback?
I definitely think that, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, whatever, I don't think it's like tomorrow, but I do think that guys like Deshaun Watson, Lamar Jackson, those Michael Vick type of guys, I do think that they are the future of the quarterback position. Because again, why would I want to simplify my playbook down and restrict it with a quarterback that can't run when I can put an athlete back there that can both run and throw, and my playbook instantly doubles in size as far as what you can do, the looks you can give. You could split Lamar Jackson out at receiver, and do like a double or triple pass even while we're talking about trick plays, because he can catch, he can run, he can throw. I mean, it just adds a new dimension to your offense when you have a guy like that.
I think it's just so interesting to see the way that leagues trend, and, like, the
Right.
NBA is the same way. Like, I guess how the NFL went from being run heavy league, at least from when I was a kid, that's how I remember it, like 20-man piles on pretty much every play. And now it's so pass heavy. Quarterbacks have almost like 50 throws a game. They're in shotgun all the time.
Yeah, I
And
mean, look at Drew Brees.
yeah, exactly. And that it's not as much deep ball, but there's just a lot of volume and short pass plays. But the NBA basketball, it's all about 3-point shooting now. And I don't know how I feel about it. I think it's kind of exciting and offense and high scores, but, like, what do you think? Like, how's football going to change? And baseball too, because a lot of people are saying that, like, baseball is too slow and they're thinking of ways to,
Speed it
like,
up.
improve it for TV. Like, what is the next trend in the next major sport, I guess, and, like, why?
Yeah, I mean, as far as football goes, I think it's important to remember, like, your bubble screens and your spot screens. Those are just extensions of the run game. That's just like a quick pitch. But so that's one thing too. But those get counted as passing yards. But if you go back and look, if you want to count them as rush yards, in the grand scheme of everything as a coach, you really can when you go back and look at your statistics. Even the little, if it's a jet play, like a jet sweep, if that quarterback catches and passes it to that guy coming on the jet, those are pass yards.
Yeah.
Being a Clemson fan, I still have nightmares about, we played West Virginia in the Orange Bowl, and Tavon Austin freaking had like 300 reception yards off that little jet, pop pass. I think he scored like 4 touchdowns on us with that thing. And they were all passing yards. I mean, it's crazy, but that's just that's the trend right now is those little bubble screens and things like that. Especially if your O-line's not not the greatest in the world, which we're kind of looking at right now on my team. So there's that. And I think, as far as baseball is concerned, I think they can take a lot of notes from, maybe softball, because I personally, softball is just a faster game. And I think, Brittany, you can chime in on that. But I prefer to watch softball to baseball just because it's faster.
It is faster. It's just because you have like these, well, it's a shorter game. There's two fewer innings than there are in baseball. In college and professional, you go up to 7 innings. And then I think a lot of it is the fact that the pitchers are so much faster, and you have pitchers like that pitch in softball where they can pitch 130 pitches and pitch 3 days in a row. Whereas in baseball, you have one guy, you have to make pitching change after everything. And they actually just changed the rule in the MLB where if you're making a pitching change, that pitcher has to come in and pitch to 3 different guys. They're not allowing he throws to one batter, get a new pitcher. He throws to next batter, get a new pitcher.
I hadn't heard about that.
Yeah, which is actually really nice. And they also put pitch clocks on every pitcher because even being a Yankees fan, Masahiro Tanaka is one of the slowest pitchers on the planet. He takes forever to throw a pitch. It's painful to watch. His games ran like 4.5+ hours. It's awful. But they put pitch clocks on pitchers. They put a lot of restrictions, mostly on pitching, because that's where a lot of the problems come from.
Yeah. I mean, they're pretty much in charge of the pace of the game. The pitchers are.
Yeah. And a lot of, I don't know if it's the way that they're taught, but a lot of pitchers from Asian countries are all like normally slower pitchers, and their windup is really different as compared to an American pitcher or like a Caribbean pitcher. Their game is slower. So it's kind of nice to see that being changed because, again, most people cannot sit and watch a full 9-inning baseball game because it gets boring.
Right.
I will say, like, noticing even basketball, I watched the game 2 last night. Just seeing the way that the players move is entirely different from how they moved 10, 20 years ago. Like, not only do they move faster, but they also are more physically fit, and that you can actually see their muscles. So, like, guys weren't doing the same level of strength and conditioning back then that they're doing now. Like, literally every guy on the court had muscular definition, was physically fit. Like they were ready to go. I think that's changed entirely, especially since even with our school here at Phelps, we're phasing out the big guy. Like our biggest guy is like 7 foot on the team, and he is one of our top 3-point shooters. Like no one's heavy on the team. Everyone is able to do anything on the court. So, and that's what I noticed last night. Like there wasn't a Glenn Davis from the
Big Baby.
Yeah. So like even looking at Glenn Davis, when he started out from LSU, he was not a physically fit guy. He was pretty heavy. I'm not talking like going up 300 pounds, but he was not as physically fit as other guys, like much like Shaq. But again, you can't really compare many guys to Shaq. But now, even like guys in the paint like Dwight Howard and Anthony Davis, like those guys are muscular, and they're slim, they're lean.
Mm-hmm.
Like you just wouldn't find that down low in the paint 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's changing to a much more mobile game, a faster paced game.
Yeah.
Everyone's got to be able to shoot a 3-point shot because that's much more valuable. The chances of it going in, not as likely, but it means it helps your team that much more. So guys were just firing off shots left and right. Everyone was like a lean mean machine. I think that's how it's going to transition in the future.
And it's funny you mentioned that because even in football, we get that transition. Like when we look at linebackers, we're looking really more for what they call a tweener, which is like a mix between a safety and a linebacker, right? Isaiah Thomas, that plays for the Cardinals now, he played for Clemson last year. When he was coming out, he was seen as really, really valuable. He's a I think it was 11th overall or something like that, because he is, that athletic guy, like you're saying. He's a Swiss Army knife. He can cover tight ends and shut them down, or he can cover that slot guy, but he can also, rush the quarterback, play the run, all that stuff. So I think there's just a trend overall in sports in general on versatility, So I just think that's the overall trend, period,
Yeah, you definitely want the guy that can play every position and stay in the game for the entire game. You need someone who's super fit. And I think just in general, like, because strength and conditioning and just knowledge about nutrition and like the sports sciences has become so advanced, you do see a lot of people that are in so much better shape. They're just more fit just in general over the course of any sport. In baseball, they're talking about how there are so many home runs. They're talking about if the balls are created differently, if they started making different balls, or if these guys are really just that strong now. And like you said, with basketball, you have guys like you're never going to see a guy that looks like Larry Bird in the NBA anymore and be that dominant. Like, it's just not going to happen. He looked like anybody's dad sitting on
Joe
the
Dirt.
sidelines.
Like Joe Dirt.
Yeah, like they just don't look like they used to just look like these regular everyday guys. And now you see an NBA player. I saw what's his face that used to play for the Steelers? I can never think of his name. Oh, James Harrison. I saw him and met him in an airport, and this man is massive. Like, they always talk about how he was one of the strongest people in the NFL at the
You
time.
should watch
And
his workout videos.
oh my God, I saw him in the airport and I was like, that guy's huge. So it's like, it was just one of those weird out of body experiences where you're like, wow, these guys are actually massive people.
Yeah. I can't remember who it was that was talking about the length of baseball games, like trying to shorten it. But I watched a documentary last year on cricket, and while cricket's not too popular in the U.S., it's insanely popular.
Huge.
Like in India and England. And one problem that they were having was, that the games took 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
So
That's crazy.
Yeah. There's now an Indian cricket league. I can't remember what the name of the league is called, but they now have something called T20, and it means like 20 overs, which like an over is a certain number of pitches, I believe. And it's been shortened to a 3-hour, 4-hour game because too many people were complaining. They were noticing attendance was low. They turned a 2 or 3 day event into a 3 or 4 hour game so that they're noticing attendance is going back up. Is that something we have to do where we have less innings or we have a fast play? Because pretty much the rules have stayed the same. It's just that they shortened how many overs you could have in a game. Like, that was it. So maybe that's something that with the baseball.
That's probably where the game is heading. But honestly, people are really pushing back in baseball because baseball is such a traditional sport and it's really never changed. So there's a ton of pushback on changing the game to either shorter innings or changing pitching styles, whatever. People do not like it at all.
I don't know. I've also listened to like Alex Rodriguez talk about how the game just needs more personality and more character. They need more people like Tatis, the guy for the Padres. Yeah, I mean, he's an enigma, and that's awesome. The game needs more of that. And like Tim Anderson on the White Sox, just like guys with personality who a little bit more like you see in football and basketball.
OBJ.
They celebrate. Yeah, like you got to let them and especially like when they're my age too, it's like, I know you play, like you're playing a traditional game, but we're still just like kids, young guys. Like it's not that much different than playing in college. So
100%.
Do you guys have anything else to add, or should we just kind of wrap it up? Because Joey said his computer's on 1%. So
yeah, and we hit the 40-minute mark. So I mean,
yeah.
We touched on a ton of topics. I've got a lot of great notes here.
Cool.
So, yeah, that flowed well. That was awesome.
The most important thing though is like just to make sure I try to record, it says I need to get your permission, Brittany. So I think you're the one who's got the recording.
Yeah. I can just upload it, I think, and then maybe you upload the write-up later.
Right.
Yeah. Or you can share it with us, like the file.
Yeah. I know. I think I got everyone's emails. I should have some way to get everyone's emails.
I will do my best because me and computers are not real great. So
Trust me, I feel you. Try teaching virtual school right now with not being good with tech.
Yeah. You don't even have your video on, so you're struggling.
Yeah, dude, it's been a nightmare.
All right, so I'm gonna stop the recording.